Well, good evening, and good evening, Pastor Andrew.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here, David.
Yeah, it's just twice now. I think we've had you on Pastor, What Did You Mean?
And it's been, I think, since the end of March. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to be back.
So we're back. We're in the one story. Thank you guys for joining us. Hopefully you've been with us each week, and we continue to go through the Bible this year, and what we're calling the one story year. And we are in the middle of the major prophets. We were in the book of Ezekiel yesterday. And you were just mentioning to me, Ezekiel meaning?
God strengthens, or God will strengthen.
Yeah, God will strengthen, God will strengthen. And so just briefly, again, we're all sort of staying in here together on this one story. Ezekiel, who is he? He's a prophet.
Yep.
So who is God using him with what people at what time? Set the scene for us real quick.
Okay, I get excited about this. So here we are in the one story. You know, God obviously, he calls an individual. Abraham enters into the special covenant relationship with him. That enlarges to a nation, to a people, the nation of Israel. He says, I'm going to be your God. You're going to be my people. Right. Here's the covenant. The Israelites, short version, they don't keep the covenant. They're not faithful. They don't love the Lord God with all their heart. And so what happens is we see divine judgment. Just backing up slightly, as the nation progresses, there comes a point in time where the judges, they go away. Israel calls a king. We've got the three kings. We've got Saul, we've got David, we've got Solomon. Yep. And after Solomon, we get into what's called a divided kingdom. So we've got the northern kingdom, which is known as Israel sometimes, with the capital city of Samaria. And really, the practices there, not that the southern kingdom was much better, but it seemed that there was more depravity in the northern kingdom. And 722, the Assyrians come in, and the northern kingdom ceases to be. The Assyrians conquer, they wipe them out. In the southern kingdom, which is capital city of Jerusalem, also known as Judah, we see traces, occasions,
right,
where there's an attempt at revival. You'll get a godly king like Josiah that will come in, and God spares Judah in a really miraculous way from the Assyrian invasion. But by the point we get to around 600 BC, just the wickedness is such. We hear words like abomination, detestable practices, evil. I mean, God just says, okay, fine, have it your way. You're going to reap the consequences of this, and here comes the divine judgment.
Last week, Jeremiah is right where you are, saying you've got last chance, repent.
Yeah.
And he's standing in this moment, and really now you move into where you were.
So, and Ezekiel, Ezekiel and Jeremiah, they're so close together.
Yeah.
So you can think of the exile of the southern kingdom of Judah in terms of three phases. Okay. So we got 605, that's Daniel.
Yeah.
Then we got 597, that's Ezekiel and a lot of his fellow countrymen. Well, then Nebuchadnezzar, the army comes back in 586, and that's when Jerusalem is ransacked.
Just destroys it.
So Ezekiel goes away to Babylon in 597 BC.
And he's a captive.
Yes.
I mean, he's being taken captive.
Deported.
He's a priest at this time as part of really the 10,000 others that went at this time.
And my understanding is with Daniel and Ezekiel that Nebuchadnezzar, what he did, he was kind of selective in who he deported at these times. He took some of the ruling class, the priests, the leaders.
It was a badge of honor to be taken captive. You were wanted, so to speak, if that's a thing.
And given a position even in the government.
Yeah.
So when Ezekiel begins his ministry in 593, the Jerusalem itself hasn't been sacked. It hasn't been leveled. It hasn't been. The temple is still standing. But Ezekiel is saying to these deported people who've been exiled from their home, here's what's coming. Yeah. And sure enough, during his ministry, it happens. Yeah. And so it's this, he's able to also, even in spite of this, he's able to extend a message of hope.
Yeah. Well, so that's good. I mean, I think the important thing, too, to realize as we're piecing this one story together is that when we talk about the prophets, major, minor, whatever the prophets, it's typically always to a people, a certain geography, a certain place, a time.
Yeah.
And we don't think of all the times like Ezekiel or Daniel, ultimately, their entire ministry is a prophet ministry during captivity only.
That's right.
In Babylon.
They're not even in Jerusalem when
not
they're
in
ministering.
Jerusalem, not in Israel, they're not in Judah. And so that's an interesting point of that. And there were two passages yesterday. So if that's setting the stage, two passages that I wanted just maybe to see what you meant. Because I thought they were rich, really good stuff. Is the first, wasn't even really part of the sermon outline, but it spoke where Ezekiel was basically communicating why these consequences had happened and why there was judgment. And we go to, well, they disobeyed, they were idolaters, that sort of thing, which technically is it. But God tells us in Ezekiel 36 that because of that, the abomination before God was what they did to him. And that was really that whole, they profaned God's name.
That's right.
And I think when you mention that, I hope that was an aha moment for a lot of us. Is like our sin is really not simply disobedience. Our sin is really the rejection of God's name and His glory, and it's a profanity before Him. It's a profaning of His name.
Yeah.
Can you talk to that? What did you mean by that passage?
So the passage I think you have in mind is Ezekiel 36. I'm going to read verses 22.
Okay, starts in 22.
And I'll read 23 as well. But he says, "Therefore say to the house of Israel, thus says the Lord God, it is not for your sake, O house of Israel, that I am about to act, but for the sake of my holy name, which you have profaned among the nations to which you came." So there it is.
Yeah.
And he says, "And I will vindicate the holiness of my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, and which you have profaned among them. And the nations will know that I am the Lord, declares the Lord God, when through you I vindicate my holiness before their eyes." So yeah, profane in like 3 times in 2 verses. You know it's important.
Yeah. So is that something that, how do we have to be careful not to do that today? What would that look like for us to profane the name of God?
Well, I think it's just we can say, what's the opposite of profaning the name? And that's to regard the name of the Lord as holy.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
So profaning the name, I think that maybe the ancient Israelites, they took it to an extreme, and they wouldn't even say the name Yahweh.
Right, yeah, that's right, the reverence of the name.
They'd come up with a substitute. They'd say Adonai, or and I don't think we have to go that extreme to say, oh, I might profane if I say His name. But I think we have to be careful, like misusing, using the Lord's name in vain.
Sure.
You stub your toe, you say His name. You use it in a very trivial way. But I think also profaning the Lord's name. You look at what the Israelites did. God had so connected Himself with these people and said, hey, this is my people. When they went and behaved in a way that wasn't reflective of His kingdom values, they profaned His name because He had associated Himself with those people. And I think God associates Himself with the church today, with people who take on the name Christian or Christ follower. And so if you identify yourself as a Christian and then you go and you post something on social media that is not consistent with God's kingdom values, then you've profaned the name.
You know, when you say that, it reminds me, and I don't know if my girls are watching this week or not, but but we often talked about this a lot of times as they got older, these high school teenage years, and speaking to ourselves as well, to Christy and I as well, that when you go out, when you're in public, it was always, and remember, you're a Holcomb.
Yeah.
Remember the name. Remember, not as a setting the name up on a pedestal, but saying what you do, what I do, reflects on all of us.
Yep.
And reflects on that name, and that's really what's happening here.
I think that's what's going on here.
How we represent, if we rep the name of God in a holy way, versus profaning it. And then, of course, the opposite of that, or the question, the follow-up, how do we honor it? How do we actually build it up? And it is that reverence or making His name famous, right? As we kind of get that.
I just think of that Chris Tomlin song.
Yeah.
And you know the one I'm talking about, where the refrain goes, "Sing with me, how great is our God, and all will see how great is our God." And that's really the goal of a lot of this.
Yeah.
And for a moment, you might just say, well, hold on. that makes God seem pretty self-centered, that he's just acting for the sake of his name, that he cares about his own glory. But wait a second, because it could be, and I think this is what the Bible would teach, that when we behold God's glory, that when we get to see it, that's what's really in our best interest. That we're most satisfied, we're most content, we're all that God created us to be when we're experiencing that holiness. When we get to behold it.
Name above all names.
That's right.
Guard it, protect it,
revere it,
revere it. Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay.
Attach worth to it. Anything we can.
Yeah.
You know, but it's not like somehow that if we don't do it, like God's stock is somehow going down.
Right. Yeah.
He is who he is, and we're just kind of maybe helping pull back the curtain a little bit and helping people see it for what it is.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, so that was the first part of the sort of what did you mean.
Okay.
The second part, I think, was really the sort of the bulk of the sermon. It was really interesting. If you didn't get a chance to see it yet, please go see the sermon yesterday or the worship service. Worship with us still all through the week. But you really laid out two questions, and you said there were two fundamental questions that I would suggest, I guess, in listening to you, that you feel like we all answer in some form or fashion.
That's right.
We can't help but answer. It's like the old, we're all theologians. Everyone has a theology of God. You can't not have one.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, you still have a theology. You somehow are answering these two questions. So remind us what those two questions were.
Okay.
And what did you mean that Ezekiel 11 helped provide a biblical answer to these two questions?
So the two questions are, one, what's fundamentally wrong with the world? Or said another way, why is it that there's brokenness, that there's messiness, that there's corruption? Why does that exist? And then the second question is, what's the solution?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, how do we make it right? Is there a fix? Can we rectify this? Is there a way for the world to get better?
Yeah. And there's many, so 11, Ezekiel gets to the biblical worldview to this, and we'll get. But you also mentioned before that again we all answer that in some way.
That's right.
And today there are many modern philosophies or worldviews that would answer it in various ways.
I think that's right.
And so just sort of the listing of a couple you.
I mean, even the ancient Greeks would answer it. I mean, this isn't something that just modern people are answering. It's like people search for an explanation for it. I mean, thunder and lightning storm, and look, the God's up in there, Zeus is throwing down his thunderbolt. We did something to upset him.
Yeah.
We have to appease the gods, and things are going to get better. So everybody's doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't just something that's unique to Western people living in the 21st century.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody wants an explanation for the world that they're living in. They want to try and make sense of it.
Yeah. There's a lot of brokenness. We would say a fallen world, but they would just say it's brokenness. And that's I think if I recall right, you said that there are ways of saying, well, we can social engineer the sort of Karl Marx aspect of it's really an imbalance of power, and once that gets right, it'll be right. That's a solution.
Yes.
There's this sort of we can transform or sort of transcend ourselves. From an individuality sort of standpoint to becoming whole with the world or one with the world or the spirit, and that's sort of a lot of
an Eastern
New Age
worldview.
kind of Eastern worldview, and then the humanism, which is different than when we say humanists like in Reformation times, Erasmus or something.
It's not Erasmus.
This is different. This is a secular humanist.
Yes.
That is basically, what did you mean by that? That one's may hit us a lot, probably more closely.
Okay. So, I mean, hopefully you'll go back and watch it. If I'll give the abbreviated version.
Please,
here.
Yeah.
But a secular humanist, so Erasmus, great individual,
right.
He's operating from a Christian worldview. I mean, he believed God exists. A secular humanist would start with the presupposition that there's no such thing as a supernatural. So to begin this story, you have to say that I'm denying the existence of a God, a cosmic power, a spiritual force. None of that even exists. Okay. Because the reason that we're all here is the best explanation is just it's unguided, it's undirected, the just natural selection of random mutations. Right atoms, right time, bumping into each other. This is why we have what we have. And so there's really not a way for a secular humanist to say, isn't this the way the world should be?
There's no solution for a sec. It's just going to happen what's going to happen.
Well, they would offer a solution. They would say the world could be a better place.
Okay.
But in terms of like really putting their finger on the problem and saying,
okay,
man,
here's why.
Look at where we're at right now. Here's where we should be instead. They would just say, the reason we're at where we're at is just because life is random. I mean, it's just purposeless and blind evolution. But we can still make it better through our reason.
Okay.
Look, here's some things we could do collectively to somehow make us better suited for survival. Okay. Here's how we could have progress. I mean, they're interested in progress and evolution.
But then we see all these options. We're confronted with them. We might come up against them in our workplace, in our schools,
That's right.
in our houses, our homes.
In the movies we're watching, in the television shows, you see these worldviews being played out in the characters on the TV shows that you're watching.
Yeah, and so just continue to, and sometimes just promoting these worldviews for certain, intentionally, right?
Yeah.
And so Ezekiel 11 provides us a biblical alternative, a worldview for which God would say, here's why there's a problem, and here's the solution. Let's wrap it up with that. What did you mean? What does he show us there?
So I don't think this is tangential, I think, to Ezekiel. I mean, I don't think Ezekiel was giving necessarily an apologetics talk.
Sure. Okay.
To the people that were hanging out in Babylon and they were hearing this. They weren't like, oh, this is great, Christian philosophy 101.
This makes me feel better.
But what I want us to see is that the Bible isn't just this book of, well, here's how you can be saved. It's not the unabridged version to a gospel track. It's like, well, here's the really long version.
Okay.
There's so much in here that it's relevant for all of life, and it really does help us have a lens which to understand the whole world and our place in it. And so Ezekiel in 11 and 36, what he helps us understand is what's wrong with the world and how it can be made right. And he says fundamentally what's wrong with the world at the end of the day is that we as human beings, we've rebelled against God's authority. And not only does that separate us from God, that also separates us from each other. That separates us from nature.
Right.
That separates even us from ourselves. We have guilt.
Right.
And so there's all this separation, there's all this fracturing that has occurred because of this fall.
Right.
And the way that we make things right is Ezekiel 11 and 36, we realize that this isn't something we can do for ourselves. God's going to come and have to intervene for us. And he's going to offer us a two-part solution.
Okay.
And he wants to start with us. He wants to start with the redemption of his people. There's a reason that human beings are created last in the order as we think back to Genesis.
Okay.
We're the culmination of his creative activity.
It's
like he puts us on a pedestal as you read it.
Right.
It's like, hey, and I set apart them. They're in my image for a divine purpose. They're made according to a divine pattern, for a divine plan. And he wants to restore that by giving us this new heart. He wants to take away our stony heart, and he wants to give us a heart of flesh. And that sets things in motion. But ultimately we know that that also, and he alludes to this in Ezekiel 37.
This is the shadow.
That we're awaiting, he calls it a new David.
Yeah.
Who's going to come and be king. So the high water mark for the nation of Israel is David's reign. That's where things are at the zenith. And he says, we're going to get a new David.
Yeah.
And this new David, he's going to come and he's going to reign. And we know that at that future point in time, that every dimension of this world that has been affected by our sin is going to be redeemed and it's going to be restored.
Wow. The one story continues to just sort of, move this. I mean, what you just described was even back from the garden.
Yeah.
Moving us through to the Gospels. And Ezekiel, what we're seeing in these words does that beautifully. Hearts of stone to hearts of flesh. And
that's the good word.
That's a good
that's
word.
The
that's
good
the
news.
Solution. Yeah, that's right.
That's the good news.
Yeah. Well,
and I just when I think about Aslan breathing on those statues, I was wondering if C.S. Lewis, he's not with us, we can't ask him, if C.S. Lewis was thinking about this.
Yeah, and we showed the clip yesterday that just just thawed him out. Yeah, so and that's really what's happening to our hearts.
That's what he's doing.
That's great. Thank you, Pastor Andrew.
Thank you, Pastor David.
Appreciate for letting us know what you meant, and thank you for being with us today. Just a little bit of a programming note. Next week, with the July 4th long weekend, we will not have a Pastor What Did You Mean with David as he wraps up the final major prophet, Daniel Sunday. So you don't want to miss the teaching on Daniel Sunday. And as we move through prophets, we'll then do a couple of minor prophets before we move to Volume 3 and the New Testament. But the one story year moves on, and have a great week. And may we honor and revere the name above all names as we go in this week. And we'll see you soon.
God bless.